All right, we're back with another episode of Welcome to the Metaverse. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will notice that I've completely missed the dress code because Robin is in full motion capture gear, complete with helmet and camera on the face. You look toasty.
I feel a bit of a helmet right now, I'll be honest. It's toasty. It's not very comfortable. I keep like clanging my face capture thing into something. I just like this.
Yes, it's too close for me.
It's like a bit of a Dalek situation going on here. But, well, that was a good laugh there.
We're good. Should we do this? We've got loads of metaverse stories, so let's get into it. All right, so kicking off with the first story, we have a guy who has been making these awesome little videos for a while. His name, I think you pronounce it like this, Tori Kanabe. And he's been sort of merging VR with ChatGPT to create these scenarios to help us mere physical humans practice stuff. So the most recent one he did was all about ChatGPT being a wingman.
All right, Tom. How about those two girls over there by the wall? They seem to be chatting and not too involved in any other conversations. Why don't you go over and introduce yourself?
Hi there. I'm Tom. How are you guys enjoying the party so far?
Hi, I'm Alice, and this is my friend. The party has been a bit quiet so far. I don't know. I'm not really a party person. What about you, Tom? Are you having fun?
You seemed confident and engaged in the conversation, and Alice and Keiko seemed interested in what you had to say.
So Tori's German, and the hilarious thing about this clip is he just sounds this like very straight down the middle of the line German dude. Hey, guy, Greg. What should I do? Should I talk to these guys over there? And he makes a little joke about how he's going to talk to the two dudes about like vector embeddings. That was
it was okay. Yeah.
It was okay. But what's hilarious about this is like if you were to show someone in 1990 like what VR is going to be like, that's probably what they had in mind. Like this really awkward exchanges. You talk to the NPC. And there's this painful lag, and then it comes back, and it's all like super positive. It's like, hey, wow, Tom, you did really good there. That was great. Maybe next time, ask some more questions. And then there's this really weird section where there's this mixed race girl just dancing there, and she's like, hey, yeah, I just really like to dance. I just really like to dance like this. Maybe you should try dancing too. And the question you've got to ask yourself is like, what does that teach normal humans about social interaction in the real world?
Yeah, this is it. The idea of simulating stuff in VR is cool and works for certain things. Like, I don't know, if you're a firefighter, they do it to train in certain environments. Does it definitely work in social situations? Also, if you're going to do a house party and you're going to, practice social things, maybe if it's your thing, I would go in a couple beers down probably. So I'd be in VR in a couple beers, really loud music so you can barely hear anyone as well. Just to really, if you're going to simulate an actual house party, that's probably the way to do it. But
yeah, there's nothing quite like being in a conversation with someone where you have no idea what they're saying because you can't hear them. You're like, hey, yeah, that's great, yeah.
What's great? Yeah.
That's you can't really. Maybe you can replicate that in VR, and maybe that's not the point. But what's weird about this is the NPC has memory. The NPC understands what has just happened and can form an opinion based on what you did and how you interacted with the NPCs. And we shouldn't really be that surprised because ChatGPT, that's how it does what it does. It remembers the conversation. But now you're seeing that conversation being put into digital characters. It looks terrible. It feels clunky. But as with all of this stuff, when you think about what Midjourney can do and how like scaled up this can be, and then you put it in Unreal Engine, photorealistic and everything else, it won't be too long until it really is like being there. It's just virtual. And then I think we can start to kind of put the snark about the technical limitations of all of this stuff aside and really focus in on this single important thing, which is human versus digital interactions, what they teach us, what they don't teach us, and where they go next. Because, I mean, whether we like it or not, this is where things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, to be vaguely serious for a moment, there is something cool about it, and we're going to see this go into video games where you're going to be walking around and NPCs don't have set responses, but they remember what you said before, and storylines can spin off from various different things as they generate in real time, which is definitely cool. So there's something really cool here. And at Based as well, you've been chatting to Quantum Engine, who do a similar thing, so it's starting to find its way into what we're doing as well. So yeah, maybe you can chat to us about that.
Yeah, so Quantum Engine is a Silicon Valley backed AI company that no one's really ever heard of, but they're led by a young man called Jesse Liu. Jesse Liu is a proper AIOG, like he hung out with Sam Altman. They worked on stuff together. He knows his stuff. Now, he doesn't have the profile of Sam Altman, but the tech that they're building is really interesting. We saw a demo with Quantum Engine where they took a chat engine and put it inside a Matrix demo where you could be a player and ask Morpheus to do things. So you could ask Morpheus to go and move an object in Unreal to another object or to start dancing. So there's logic built into this NPC. You can trigger that logic. And as far as they were telling me, the commands that you gave this NPC would then trigger the creation of blueprints, so the logic that drives the character in real time in response to what you said. That is next level, because normally all of that stuff is baked in. It's pre-baked what the character can do, the limits of what it can do. But if it can then respond to things that you've said, write its own logic, and then go do what you want it to do, it's pretty interesting. So the way we're using it is we will be bringing our IP, which is Trashland and all this crazy stuff that we're doing, into a digital world in which I can be there in mocap. And we've done this before. We've gone in the Matrix demo world, and it's fantastic. You have NPCs walking around, but you can't talk to them. You can't interact with them. We were like, what if you could? So now, being able to put our lore, our IP into the mouths of these characters, have them talk. But because ChatGPT is now connected to the internet, it can refer to stuff that's going on in the world. So I can interrogate it about, let's say, the top 5 headlines about the metaverse, or whether Tim Sweeney's voice is a bit like Halliday's in Ready Player One, all these kind of things. And I'll be able to have those conversations with it. Of course, you can set limits on what that character can do, but character AI, you've talked about this previously on the podcast, those kind of rich experiences, they've always felt like they were at a distance. They weren't accessible to us. And the setup that we've got is pretty rarefied. But then when you think about these open source large language models that are coming out, pretty much anyone's going to be able to run this for low cost, low bandwidth, low overhead in terms of computer size on a laptop, and start creating their own story worlds and their own rich experiences in that way. And of course, that time between question and answer will reduce. It's going to get weird.
Yeah, it's going to get super weird, isn't it? And awesome, definitely. And we'll see like a load of like crazy new experiences, video game based or Unreal Engine run, where all of this stuff that you're talking about is happening.
Question for you, did you see the Unrecorded demo? So it was
the
first-person shooter.
one, yeah.
Hyper-realistic. And like the thing that made that thing so compelling is the camera looks terrible. And there's a real insight in there, because when we think of Unreal, we think of hyper-realist, hyper cinematic and widescreen, glorious, and everything's lit perfectly. But for some reason, when I think about it, what I'm drawn to is like, if I'm an 8-year-old and I want to do a TikTok and I pull out my phone, I don't care what it's lit like. I just want to make content. So we've been trying really hard with the mocap volume to think that way, to be more lightweight, to think less like cinema and think more like TikToker. And that's why Unrecorded was so interesting, because it was like an autofocus camera that was bleached out and wasn't really responding properly, and it had this kind of GoPro lens on it, and it really brought you in. It really made you feel that. So in a way, like the most immersive version of things is the most crap. Weirdly.
Yeah, often it's the most like real, isn't it? That it felt really unnerving because it was like body cam captured footage. Like if you had been watching a scenario like that, you would have maybe thought that was real. And it spins off into loads of other questions, which these conversations always do, but about like a bit of morals of, do we want it to be, do we want first person shooters to be that hyper real? Like, is that it's all a good thing? Because I don't know if we definitely want that, and especially if we're talking about these character integrations that they could talk to, know who you are, and then maybe you shoot them and it feels real. Like, that feels like a slippery slope, but we'll find out.
Oh my gosh, there's so many deep questions about that. And like, as much as we make fun of all this stuff and we go there, I was trying to wrap my head around what education looks like in an AI world, and how if you could help people, I guess, exercise their worst, darkest urges in a safe setting like a metaverse, so that they could, if they were going to do a school shooting, for instance, they would go and do it in a virtual world, and then you could monitor that and understand it, and then kind of do something about it. You get into some really deep, dark questions here. But again, the opposite of that is if you are letting people indulge these fantasies and you're letting them do things, are we already beyond that with Call of Duty, with Fortnite, with all these shooter games which kind of just render knocking someone off to just a casual click of a mouse button? I don't know. Some deep questions, but I always lean optimist in all these kind of things. I kind of feel like everyone's pushing for the pessimistic view of it, but I don't see it that way. Not necessarily. I mean, I'm hopeful anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to be optimistic for sure. The last kind of point I wanted to make on all of this stuff is that obviously we're going to see all these new crazy experiences that we haven't seen before, but one thing that I don't think loads of people are talking about that I think is going to get really interesting, and is mentioned in Ready Player One a lot actually, is the whole nostalgia side of all of this, right? Being able to, the obvious kind of side is to be able to go and explore historical places that we never could, and that'll be used in schools. Obviously, go to the Battle of the Somme or whatever it is and actually see it. And there's an app on the Meta Quest called Wander, where it's a bit like Google Street View, but you can roll back the years when you're stood there, and it rolls back what the street was like as you go back. And that seems obvious, but more so like the kind of personal nostalgia of stuff. So whatever it was that you loved when you were growing up as a kid, whether it's TV show or movie or whatever, to be able to go, I don't know, back to like a friend's setting in VR and actually go and look around, but maybe even play the roles of the characters. And it happens in Ready Player One where he has to kind of get through certain stages by doing the lines in the show, or if they're reacting to you, could you go and sort of, realize what it's like to be in that show and kind of rewrite it with your own character or whatever. And that side of stuff gets really interesting, I think. So
yeah, there's a whole world of data capture and data recording and fidelity of experiences and of everything being sort of always on. There's this kind of weird rumor that Apple has had basically extra capacity on mobile phones so they can run a map of the world, and they've been capturing this LiDAR data of a map of the world, so that when the VR glasses come, there's a way of accessing this 3D map of the world that's ready to go on your device and locally. There's this ludicrous Tony Scott film called Deja Vu. I don't know if you ever saw it, but like Denzel Washington, obviously, he can go back in time and watch a recording of the world as it was, like, I forget how long it is. It's like 8 hours previously, but it always moves forward. But he has this fully realized, fully realistic version of the world that he can go and explore and go and visit and go and look around. I mean, are we just living in a simulation? Is that actually what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm starting to believe it more and more, to be honest. There's a cool clip that somebody made of the Titanic, which they've rebuilt on that kind of theme of historical stuff, which, you can have a little look at if you're watching on YouTube. And it's kind of cool, because it's one of those things that we would have probably all liked to have experienced up until the point where it hit the iceberg. I think they're doing another. Haven't they actually built a real second Titanic that they're doing or something? I don't know.
It's weird how a ship crashing and a ship that defined luxury and opulence has become this historical touch point, mainly thanks to James Cameron.
Yes.
And that infamous scene on the raft,
yeah,
where she couldn't make room for him, just a little bit of room, just a tiny little bit of room.
I think we've done it.
I think that's known as a plot hole. It's like, he has to die, otherwise the film has no emotional resonance. The end.
Big stuff, yeah. All right. Okay, the next thing we wanted to roll onto was picking up the idea of virtual humans, right? So the last episode of the podcast was all about this, and how there's some super hyper-realistic characters, but also through the history of VTubers and everything else. It's 1.5 billion views a month on YouTube are made by virtual humans now, so you can check out that episode if you want to get stuck into that. But we thought we'd go a little bit deeper on the tools that you can use. So if you want to start experimenting with virtual humans, then here's some stuff that you can do. So kicking off with a program called Animes, which is cool. It's free, and it uses facial mode capture just on your webcam or on an iPhone, and it has a whole selection of kind of wild characters. So a bit like amazing Snapchat filters, but really easy to set up and use, and you can stream straight away on Twitch, YouTube, or use it for weird work meetings if you want. It's pretty cool, and you can import also Ready Player Me. We've had them on the show, so that's another place you can go and create an avatar, bring it into this program as well. They've also got kind of loads of different characters you can mix up, and kind of backgrounds and animations as well. So you can make some pretty awesome stuff, especially kind of memeable stuff as well, using Animes, which is fun. So that is one to check out if you want kind of an easy, quick version of stuff that looks great. You had a look at something called DNA Block's Replicant, which was very cool. It's on the way out. That's one to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, so we are... I mean, I guess that there are different solutions. There's the really scaled up, like mocap, fully like faithful, high fidelity version of performing digital characters, which is extremely challenging. It involves all sorts of different technologies working together. And there's the really lightweight version, which is using a mobile phone to drive character animation. What Replicant does is it uses the best of Unreal Engine, so really nice, high quality models. They give you certain models, they give you certain backgrounds, and the way they do it is, again, very lightweight. But the trick is here, they're just using a mobile phone. You can plug in more sophisticated mocap data, but for most people, that won't be necessary. But as you sort of grow into that, I guess you can use things like Wonder Studio, which can spit out a Blender skeleton from video. But what I liked about this one is that they've got all sorts of other tools built in there. So the back end is Unreal, but they're trying to build a system where you can easily swap out a voice, you can easily swap out a character, you can easily swap out types of animations, and the results, honestly, they look pretty good. It has a vibe about it, and it has all sorts of different kind of sliders and things, but it seems to be quite user-friendly and quite intuitive. And I think that's sometimes with VTubing, you have to go through all these weird Japanese websites to download a piece of software that looks a little bit dodgy and you're not quite sure where it's coming from. But that one felt a little cleaner. But we'll have to see what it's like when we actually get to it, because at the end of the day, like, if it doesn't make you feel good as a performer, then you're going to go and find the thing that does. And sometimes being too close to realistic actually falls short of the market. It's better to be more like a cartoon.
Yeah, exactly. It's that whole TikTok thing that we were talking about before, right? But yeah, DNA Block, you can follow them on Twitter. Might as well follow Based AF if you're heading over to Twitter as well. Wanted to mention VRMs, virtual reality models. So this is kind of like a standard that a lot of programs use. There's an amazing free program called Vroid Studio where you can go and design and create your own VRM. It's 3D, but it's a bit more, looks like a kind of flatter animation, I guess. But it depends what you do with it. So you can go and get a free model there. You can buy some on the marketplace. If you're into NFTs, I have my Clone X, which I uploaded and turned it into a VRM model. And because it's a sort of standard across lots of different things, people have built cool programs and things you can do with that same file. So one of them is this, which is VRAST. So it's kind of like a Street Fighter style game. And once you've got your VRM, you can put your character in essentially Street Fighter and actually fight with it and play other people and stuff like that, which is cool. So that is something to look into. If you Google VRMs, you'll see loads of stuff that you can do with it. So that's another fun, kind of easy way to get involved.
It's probably worth talking about the file size issue with digital characters, because, you know, as we've grown into being comfortable with wider screen TVs and 4K, we've all kind of gotten used to like high resolution visual effects and CGI. And VRMs were designed to be a really lightweight version of that, because VR, you can't really handle like high poly count models and stuff. So the VRM system is designed to be very lightweight. It's very easy to have lots of people in the same space at the same time without crashing and everything slowing down and becoming unusable. So VRMs are great for that. I love Vroid Studio. Like, it tends to draw people in via anime, but you can design any kind of character you want. What I love about it is that the animations are really like performative. I think that's the right word to use. So as you perform, something happens, and the way the weights of all the animations are triggered, it's just really fun. You don't have to do very much, and it captures the eyes really well, and it gives you like a really good kind of base starting point for going through. And there's another one that I experimented with last year, which is Deepface Live.
Yes, that is wild, actually.
Deepface Live is wild. So that came from the guys that created Deepface Lab, which is the software that was the most used for deep fakes. So I got into deepfakes a couple of years ago and was really trying to understand what they were and how they worked, and that was a whole world of crazy. Then Deepface Live comes along, and you basically plug in your webcam, and then you have a selection of models. They don't have
named like not the real celebrities.
No, there's not. So there's a
it's like Dom Bruce.
There's a Dom Bruce. Yeah, there's there's a Tom Cruise one. There's an Elon Musk one. There's a Sylvester Stallone one. There's a Jim Carrey one.
Yeah.
And so like you can just dial in how much this is sitting on top of you, but it does it live. So like I was live streaming, and I would just turn into Sylvester Stallone, and then like you see yourself, you're like, this is weird, but it's happening in real time, and it's so good because the models are so well trained. And that's just another thing where you can do it in real time. You can do it in real time. It's nuts.
It's really weird, even for yourself, to watch yourself change into someone else's, like, what is happening, let alone anyone else. Quick story, hired a computer. You need like a decent enough kind of a computer to run it. And managed to accidentally, choosing the wrong settings, break the computer. So I took it back and I was like, I'm really sorry it's broken. Like, I've hired a faulty computer. And they went and looked at it and they were like, no, you've just saved 10,000 images of your own face to the desktop, and now it won't start when you start it up, because I was trying to do something weird with deepfakes. But it is good. It's free to download. If you've got a decent PC, it's worth having to play with for sure. Also, have you seen in real life, slight tangent, the lady who has actual Jim Carrey's face? Have you seen this on TikTok?
No, I have not.
I'll put it on YouTube.
No.
If you're watching, she's got Jim Carrey's face, and
How?
she owns it. I don't know. It's like some genetics has happened.
Oh, that's weird.
It's amazing. Yeah.
The funny thing is, the guy that does Deep Tom Cruise, on TikTok.
Yes, we've had them on.
Yeah. So he's now got this new company, and they're doing like stuff on America's Got Talent. They've built basically a platform for doing synthetic media.
Yes, Metaphysic, I think.
Metaphysic, exactly. And I mean, he's a content creator. He's a guy that's come up through like doing comedy, and he became this Tom Cruise lookalike, and he's really good at it. But it also turns out he's like properly like he's the guy that set up Emma Chamberlain Coffee. He's like he's a really interesting character, but just has had viral hit after viral. Do you remember Tom Cruise running for president? And it's just Tom Cruise running. Did you ever see that clip? It's amazing. It's just him running, and this script was beautiful. But like, it's funny thinking back to that huge viral hit and where we are now, and how we can all just do that.
Yeah.
But we don't have the talent underneath necessarily to carry it off, and I think that's where most people will probably fall down.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, that whole thing that they did, because I think they reached out for permission, and they're very hot on their ethics and doing it right, but like they didn't get a no, so they sort of did it anyway, and he's kind of seen it and it's fine, but it's just, the whole thing's quite an interesting story. I'll link that episode. Okay, let's go on to this, which is all about AI reading minds now. If you thought it wasn't going to get more weird.
Look into my eyes, only my eyes.
Not around the eyes, straight into the eyes. So there was a story that went around about this recently. It's kind of developed a little bit. So there is now an AI-based decoder. So this was developed by a university in Texas that can translate brain activity into text, which sounds like I'm making it up. Promise you I'm not. So it's called non-invasive mind reading. It's become possible for the first time. So I don't know how
non-invasive mind reading. Get yours here. Only $2.50.
Literally. So it's a decoder that reconstructs speech accurately using fMRI scan data. Potential applications in restoring speech for stroke or motor neuron disease patients, or what they're working on, which is a great use of it, of course. And now large language models are able to enable this interpretation of brain activity in response to speech. So they had some volunteers who trained the decoder by measuring their MRI data. Can you tell I don't really know what I'm talking about? By listening to podcasts for 16 hours in the scanner. So they did that and then basically trained the language model on the outputs of that to recognize stuff, I guess. And the decoder generates text that captures the meaning or gist of the original words. And it's been successful in describing content from silent videos based on brain activity as well. Crazy. So I will link this as well if you want to go and read about it. But we're beginning to be able to do this with AI as it learns at speed. So I don't even know where we go from here. But
well, I had a thesis on this, which was the death of the iPhone. Or the death of the smartphone. Let's call it that way. And it's not like the smartphone isn't a device through which we will interface with the world, because there's always going to be a need for something that feels like a piece of paper. But fundamentally, a lot of the things that we do, particularly, generating huge amounts of waste through the materials you need to make phones, could go away if we simply think about how we interface with the world in a different way. So spatial computing, having this 3D evolution of the internet, or spatial evolution of the internet, which I think is what the metaverse wants to be, could be. And so when you think about the command structure, Siri is a little bit inefficient, a little bit slow, but ChatGPT could be improvement on that, but you're still having to articulate a word. And if you're walking down the street just happily chatting away to Helen or Bridget or Karen or whatever it is that you're talking to, then why are they always female? Why can't it be Bert?
Yeah.
Or Georgie?
I'm going to call mine Bert for sure.
Or like something really manly like Rock Stone.
Yeah.
So that feels like, if you can embed this into a wearable, like a piece of body modification, or it becomes a chip inside your head, I feel like it's probably where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And so being able to read brain activity and turn it into text, turning into something. And I think the bit that's been really bananas for me is this idea that everything is now a conversation, that every single piece of media that exists will be turned into a conversation. So you can...
How do you mean?
So there is a plugin there's a plugin for YouTube now, which allows you to have a conversation with a video, which sounds ridiculous.
As in, it's getting the text and it's listening to it, getting the context of everything as a language model, and then you're able to converse with it.
So there's transcripts of videos, and it can understand that transcript, and then it can give you a complete kind of rundown, a summary of that video, but you can also ask it questions about that video. Not only has the context of that particular video, but if you think about how YouTube is, it's very speech heavy. So much of the content of that video is spoken, it's articulated aloud, so you can interrogate that video. But it goes further. I was working with a plugin on ChatGPT where you can load in a PDF, it can summarize it for you, but you can also have a conversation about the PDF. So the PDF becomes...
And it's multimodal, right? So it's understanding the images?
Yes.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. So you can completely interrogate a document without having to read the document. So instead of reading it, having your own questions, and then reflecting, you ask the AI to do the reflection for you based on things. Because ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, especially now if it's being able to begin to read our thoughts. It just gets crazy. And here's a practical application of that. So that's very scientific, obviously. There's a company called NextMind who have been around for a little while. And this is crazy. They have basically are working in the same space. It's called brain-computer interface technology. And their device, which is on YouTube, and I'll show a clip, is essentially, again, a non-invasive wearable device that allows users to control digital interfaces using their thoughts. So it sits on the back of your head. And how I saw it being used was a guy who was testing it, and he was in VR, and he was able to look at... It was in an environment where he was basically with aliens, and he was able to focus his attention, his eyes or brain activity, on a certain spot on the alien. The device was able to recognize an electromagnetic reading of it that was intensified because he was focusing, I assume, and the alien exploded. So he was able to just look at the alien in the game and it would explode. They're really interesting, and they're doing lots of cool stuff in this space, and they also got acquired by Snapchat at the beginning of this year, so I imagine something interesting is
Snapchat, the company that refuses to die and just keeps innovating, but no one cares.
Well, although so many people use it.
I know so many people use it, but it's like, how do they make money?
Yeah.
How do they make money? So we... it's worth actually just rewinding, because so much of what we're experiencing now has been dreamed of and imagined in pop culture. So there's a film with Clint Eastwood from the 80s called Firefox, where he goes and steals like this Russian super secret plane, which is controlled by your thoughts. So you've got, Clint Eastwood barely saying a word, and so, to help him out, they plug his brain in there. He doesn't have to speak anymore. So you can just...
Ideal.
Hey, you want him, punk? It's like, I'm going to fly a plane now, punk.
Wait, did you hear that if he's just thinking?
Yeah, well, I can't remember. The film is probably not very good, but it left a massive impression. It was like, he can fly with his thoughts. And
that will never happen, except, wait.
Yes, except here we are. So, again, Ready Player Me, like, when I think about Halliday and Ready Player Me, it's Tim Sweeney. It's the same voice. I mean, of all the people that you would have thought being an advocate and a sort of superhero for this new emerging metaverse and game space and game engine driven spatial computing, wouldn't have thought it was him, but there we are.
Simulation stuff for
Simulation
sure.
Stuff.
All right, well, that is enough of a dump of the mad stuff that's going on at the moment. We've just put out the Apple essay on the channel as well, which is obviously but is very relevant and is going to become more so over the next couple of weeks as we approach WWDC, where they may drop their headset. So that is definitely worth a watch about kind of the death of the iPhone and everything else. What else is happening at Based that we should chat about?
So we are obviously pushing further and further into mocap and trying to explore how we can take things that we built and put them into UEFN, because we think that UEFN has got tremendous potential as a growth platform. I was on stage in Tallinn last week talking about this, and you've got this weird media landscape where advertising is having a hard time. People, like companies like Vice have gone bankrupt, BuzzFeed News is shut down, and so when you think about what Epic Games has built with Fortnite, this is a marketplace and economy that doesn't rely on advertising. So in terms of how people will build there and how they'll generate revenue and how they get people to go there, it's a very different model to what we've seen on YouTube. So for us, trying to build an expertise in Unreal Engine and try to use digital characters and bring them to life and sort of short circuit the animation pipeline, so what we shoot on a camera in the volume is what goes out. We don't have to put it into animation or rendering. That's really where we're at the moment. And you are going to be presenting a film next week.
Yes.
As a virtual real estate. You've got your best bib and tucker on. You're going to be like showing people around virtual real estate, for good or for worse.
Exactly, yeah. I'm going after the idea that it's impossible to buy a house in real life, so I'm going to start my own digital property empire in the metaverse. So.
I'm curious how that went for you, because so many of the people who love to dunk on the metaverse dunk specifically on the rent-seeking aspect of many Web3 platforms. And actually, there was an interesting Outlier Venture thesis that came out just yesterday, where they were talking about the difficulty of getting to what they would like to see as the open metaverse, which is, something that Tim Sweeney again talks about a lot, just interoperability, platforms that can share assets between each other and share the fundamental atomic qualities of assets, maybe not necessarily the geometry of those assets, but what they represent. And then you have, on the other side, you have a lot of big players moving to ring fence a position in AI and ring fence a position in NFTs and in data. So you've got Reddit, with just an Adidas and Nike all moving in, and it just feels a little bit like not Web3 but Web 2.5, and it feels that there's going to be a fairly heavy philosophical discussion probably for the next 12 months over the place of Web3 before the Bitcoin halving happens, and then the usual kind of optimistic cycle starts to begin again. So I'm curious how that's going to wash out.
Yeah, just to wrap up, I saw that we now have NFTs on Dogecoin called Doginals. So I'll leave you with that, with not financial advice, not that you needed it. Good stuff. I think that wraps it up for this episode. So we will see you for next week. Make sure you subscribe on the Basic AF YouTube channel. Videos going out every week. And enjoy yourself. Have a nice time. See you next time.